Okay, hello and welcome to the 100 Day Art Challenge. This video is number 92 of 100, which means that this is the ninth, 9 left. This video is the 9th of 9 left. There's 8 after this, that's what I'm trying to say. And this is mercifully a change from the recent run of portraits that I was trying, and I really did suffer through those, so I'm glad to put an end to that. As much as I've done a lot of portraits and enjoyed them, I've done them in oil pastels and soft pastels and pencils and all sorts of things. I then tried them in oil paints and just ran out of steam, so I'm now still using oil paints for a couple more videos, and this is a moment in time which I took a quick photograph whilst I was on my way back home from visiting a friend. In fact, I may have been looking after my friend's cat, I think, and for regular viewers will know that is Mona. And on the way back I was stopped in traffic and just saw this window through these buildings and this little alleyway through these shops to the high street, and I thought I would take a quick picture. I know you're not supposed to do that, but when you're thinking in paint all the time, things like this are too tempting to pass up, so I thought I'll take a quick picture of what I'm seeing, and that will now become part of the challenge. And that's what this is. It's just a memory, it's a moment in time that is now just frozen in paint, and it's my attempt at painting it, but it's because it's such a small board, I'm going to make an excuse and say I've struggled because it's such a small board. I'd like to paint this better and more accurately to what I was seeing and feeling at the time, and but this is just a little study, a sketch if you will, and that's what a lot of these have to be for the challenge because of the time constraints. They just end up being sketches, but nonetheless it's still, I think, quite a nice little moment and point to reflect on. And basically it's as I said, just an alleyway looking through to the high street, but I like the fact that there is this kind of sign which goes across. That's the long horizontal that you can see in the centre. There's a sign that advertises some of the businesses on each side, and then there's charity shops and bits and bobs here and there, and that's what I quite like about some of this, is some of the limited details. I don't want too many details, but there are a few, and it wasn't populated by people, which is a preference of mine, even though that does vary between different artists, and for me I would rather have something which was a bit more sparse, and that's what I quite enjoy about this as well. But yeah, it was a lovely day. I remember this is the time when I was learning to play the piano a little bit whilst looking after Mona, and then I would drive back after taking care of her for a bit and come and edit podcasts, and that's mostly what I have going on, is interviews and editing of podcast episodes. If I'm not making videos for a gallery, then that's what my time is taken up with. So this challenge has been just an additional job a lot of the time, which the joy has been stripped out of it, I'm afraid, and you'll tell the later it gets in the challenge, the less enthusiastic I sound about it. But bits like this are a window of enthusiasm and inspiration in a time which has become a bit trying as the months progress, but that's because there are parts of this that I really enjoy and other parts which are, again, a bit more challenging, and doing the geometric shapes and the perspective is a bit tricky freehand. There was no drawing and I need to improve on that, but I did like the sky, and that's what you see me starting here. And it's rare that I do skies. Most of my paintings for some reason don't have skies. They're either interiors of people, or they're I don't know what the other paintings are. I'd have to reflect on it and have a look. I think there's a lot of portraits that I've done, and I've just not done that many skies, and I quite enjoy doing them when I can. And obviously it looks as though I've just blocked it in blue, and that's not too interesting, but that's where I start to introduce some lighter tones and try to start suggesting clouds in certain places. And that is what I enjoy about this painting, is that it does have that aspect to it. Now, one thing that you may notice is that I am using linseed oil instead of white spirit or terps, and that's because this was well, I think I mentioned it earlier, this is out of sequence. I don't think I did mention this earlier actually. I record things out of sequence, so that's why that's the medium for this video. You can see there, struggling with the colour of the ground. The ground is now equally as light as the sky, which is not correct, but initially I thought that was fine. So it's a bit of a problem, it's an ongoing back and forth. It was painting something in, then changing it, painting back over it, and there's been a lot of that. For such a small painting, it has been a case of wrestling with the different colours, and to a certain extent the tones as well. And that's what I'm doing with the white here, is to try and lighten certain parts of the concrete. Now, you and I know that the concrete was already tonally equivalent with the sky, but whilst I'm painting this, I'm completely oblivious to that fact, and all I've looked at is the colour. But thankfully I'm now using the whites to go into the sky and to create a bit of tonality, a bit of texture, a bit of suggestion of clouds, which is what this sky needs, because I don't want it to be flat. I want it to suggest clouds, but I want it to be very light, because sometimes clouds over here can be just very, very faint, subtle clouds, and I quite like how they look in that sky there, because they're just really light blue suggestions of clouds, and that's similar to what I was seeing that day. Now I'm going to a bit of a darker grey, and I'm trying to push through with this concrete and trying to find something that's accurate, gives a sense of depth, but it's got to go darker than what I'm doing it at the moment. It's a problem because I'm working on the surface thinking it needs some variation, so I don't want it to be flat just like the sky. I don't want the concrete to be a flat grey. I want it to have some darker patches, some lighter patches, but whilst the whole of the concrete is too light, that doesn't work. It needs to just be darker. And I think part of the problem that I have with this painting as well is that the brushes I'm using are too big really for this painting. I don't mind using big brushes, but for this painting I need to just scale down the size of the brush that I'm using so that I can try to do something a bit more detailed and precise, instead of what I'm doing here, which is to try and use the very edge of the brush to get a suggestion of detail and a loose coverage of tone in certain areas and not others. So I want to keep it impressionistic and loose, but I also want to capitalise on the fact that this is a small painting and it needs to have small details in certain parts. Now I managed to do these little posts and these aerials, and there is a lamp post further down there. I don't want them to be too sharp because then it will draw the eye, but I want them to be there, so I don't mind how that happened. And then the sign, I thought it was right, but you can already see there's a bit of a bend in the sign there. It's not straight, so the white tapers. You see that? It goes from fat on the left to thin in the middle. Now at least I am onto the idea of making the concrete darker. And you can see the linseed oil here. It is thick and juicy, and it is wrong. I'm glad that I've changed since to using terps. And the sign, I've corrected it, but I've overcorrected it. So then it goes from a clean width on the left to too wide in the centre. So it's constantly making little mistakes that bother me. And I think that's another reason why this painting was a bit more stressful, is that I'll do something to fix a problem and then I'll create another problem. and that's never a fun process, is battling back and forth with these issues. Trying to remember the corners there on the little ginnel, suggesting that there you've got a little alleyway looking thing going down, so they're trying to get the corners of the buildings, and I quite like that because at least it gives some dimension to the form that I'm trying to describe. But it all needs cleaning up, so there are certain touches here and there that need describing, and cleaning up the edges of the white, cleaning up the edge here of this centre sign, and just bits of the black, just suggesting the brickwork in certain places and some of the shadow. So I quite like some of this, just putting in loose horizontal lines to suggest the brickwork, and then using that tone that's still on the brush to create patches of shadow on the concrete. This is the finishing touches to the painting, and I'm glad that it is at this finishing stage because I like the painting. It could be worked on for another week, but it has to be done, it has to be finished, and so I just have to leave it as it is, and I will probably finish this off after the challenge, just like several other pieces, but for now this is what I've got done, and I think it's quite a nice submission. It's nice to get away from the portraiture. That was an interesting little touch there, I don't know if you saw it, but I had to make that shadow shape go past the post, because if you don't do that then it ends at the post and it looks strange, so I made sure that it went a little bit past the post, and that makes all the difference. So just tiny little touches here and there just to clean it up, and this is the painting that I did. This is how it looks. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.